yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Substance, sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right wills. We rolling out of poverty, love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, we united, hold hands. Support each other dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can. Come on. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship fam. Live life on purpose. Together we learn it. Yeah, let's talk. We don't want to see you hurt. And we here for each other. No matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Come on. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us. We on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us. We on a sister ship.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. This is your sistership on this Sunday afternoon.
Yay!
Hello, everyone. It is your girl, Steph Fire from the Sistership Network, where we are here every Sunday afternoon talking about this and that and everything else. But before we get started today, I want to welcome our amazing hosts and guests, co-hosts and guests, because this topic today is going to be very involved, and we might not be able to unpack everything. We might need a version 2, 3, 4, and then some. But we're going to get started with the cycle of loving and healthy relationships until we part. What does that all mean? But with that being said, without further ado, I want to announce our amazing return guest, the woman who we love to the sistership heart thoroughly. The deepest feelings we have for this sister right here, Miss Toni Staten. I love you.
Love y'all. Love you. Always glad to be here.
What if I'm just going to tell y'all, she brings an energy in this room like no other. Just saying. But Toni, we're so blessed to have you on today. We're very excited for this topic because I know you got a lot to bring to the table. A little
bit.
But with that said, Toni, she's amazing. I'm going to give you just a snippet of back, and she'll correct me because, she will correct you if you're wrong. Let me get this. Blogger, screenwriter.
Yes.
Yes, honey. Yes, honey. And right, you are actually a flight attendant as well. Did I say that?
Some days.
Because I want to make sure we say that correctly.
Days.
She's got an amazing blog in that from that perspective. We'll get into that another time. But I want to welcome you, Toni. We are so blessed to have you on and very excited to have you as part of this sistership today.
Thank you. I love you all, each and every one of you. You are my sisters for real.
You see, I'm wearing the heart today. That's
I
for
know.
you.
And I want that heart. I'm gonna have to steal that heart.
And without further ado, I got to talk about my girl, Spicy, our queenager. I love her to death. I mean, she brings a level of spice up in here. And honey, we love your hair.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Pat it. We love that. We love that hair. She is our queenager. We love her to death. She brings a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience as well, and is so important for this particular topic of discussion because, without life experiences, it's hard to speak to subjects like these that really matter and that really affect people in many different ways. Um, so, with that said, we talk about the cycle of loving and healthy relationships until we part. So let me ask this question first and foremost. One word description of what you think or feel or consider the cycle of loving and healthy relationship. What is the one word that you would say, Tony?
The one word I would say is compatibility.
Mm, nice.
Definitely. Compatibility is so important. I don't care what you have and what you don't have, but if you have compatibility, you
Mhm.
have the skills and the wherewithal to navigate any situation if you're compatible. And it doesn't mean that you always agree or you think alike. It just means that you are congruent and you're compatible. So I would say compatibility.
Love that. Love that compatibility. We're gonna pack that one, unpack that one a little more. Jane, what's your thoughts?
I originally was going to say history.
Ooh.
Mm.
History.
That's one to unpack. That's
Mhm.
one to unpack because
Mhm.
as we look at even today, relationships, marriages, you have less, right? The percentage of marriages today are dropping.
Mhm.
So, but back in the day, you either had a history with someone starting from high school, might be your high school sweetheart, and then you evolved and then you grew up and you became individuals, but in a relationship, and that could have its own challenges.
Yes.
So I love that history is a
Yeah,
good
that's a good one.
that's a good one. So let me just because when we think about marriages, and let's talk about when someone is actually at the altar getting married, and we all choose, like, well, some of us choose a particular scripture, right? To kind of um, jump off our marriage, for lack of a better word. And I love that jump because I think of the Jump Street Chronicles, right? So Jump C Chronicles. I say that wrong all the time. But to jump off our marriages, the one most popular um, is the Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 8. So love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, perseveres. Love never fails. Now, when we unpack all of that, there's particular pieces of this that, when we think of marriage and the longevity of marriage, there are all these elements that we go through, all these personalities and changes that go on in our lives. And then we start thinking about these particular words.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that we discuss is let's talk about the importance or the difference of trust versus love. Which is more important? Because as we see our lives with someone, there's a particular need there of trusting that individual with
Mm-hmm.
your life because your expectation is that you're going to carry this marriage through to the end, right? And with that comes a level of trust. So I ask, which do you feel is more important? Is there an importance of one versus the other? Is one more important than the other? Or are they both the same? What are your thoughts? Tony, what do you think?
I'll jump in. I don't think one is more important than the other, but I think specifically if you don't have trust, it is very difficult to act on the other. It's very difficult to act on love. You might still have love for somebody, but I think trust is the key ingredient because when you have, there's a sense of safety. There's a
Mm,
sense of security. When you have love and you have no trust, you're unsafe.
mm,
And it's very, very difficult to grow, to
mm,
blossom with someone if that sense of trust that they don't have your best on their behalf, they don't have your best interest in maintaining and building and loving. They don't have your best interest at heart because
mhm.
you don't trust them. You can love them all day long, but it won't go any further.
That's a great point. So a foundation of love and trust is trust. One of those
Absolutely.
foundations or one of those principles. Jane, what are your
Absolutely.
thoughts? I mean, I know with your husband, just kind of talk through what your thoughts are as far as trust.
Um, well, I mean, we were 17 when we got married. Um, you spoke about, when you're at that altar, what are you thinking? Well, for me, I mean, I was almost in labor. My dad had a gun. No, I'm just kidding. He did not. He did not. He did not. But he kind of told my soon-to-be husband, "You either marry her, or I'm putting the maloik on you. The evil eye.
The evil
Getting
eye.
it. You're getting it." But all kidding aside, we were so young, and uh, we came from a very similar background. So we built the foundation of our marriage on just the two of us, because the odds were against us. Let's face it, we were 17, we were pregnant. I think it's like 16% of those marriages really make it. Okay.
Mm,
And back then, you got married, whether you loved, trusted, or whatever. It was safe
mm,
face, right?
mm.
The family, you're going to shame us. You can't have a baby without a husband, blah, 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 blah. But we did love each other, and we trusted each other because we couldn't trust anyone else.
Mm.
Okay. Everyone, like I said, everyone, we had the wedding, we got married, and everybody, gathered around us, but nobody thought it was ever going to work. We were never going to
Mhm.
make it, but
Yeah.
we knew we would. And so we learned to build our trust in each other. And that's kind of how we started the foundation of our marriage,
Mhm.
was truly and we did love each other, but I don't know at that age that you really know. I, I have to say this, if I can, and I don't mean to monopolize the conversation,
No,
but
not at all.
I feel as you get older, the kind of love you're looking for changes in different
Mm,
phases. There's different phases of love.
mhm.
When my husband and I first got married, there was a lot of passion, and oh my God, we couldn't keep our hands off of each other. Hence why I had a baby 7 months later. But anyway, um, well, with that said, uh, and then as we went through our life together, the bond of love changed,
Mm,
not for the worse, but for the better. And
mm.
we didn't have to have that intimacy all the time anymore to reassure or
Yeah.
to create that establishment of love between
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
Now that I'm a widow and I date and do those kinds of things, that's why I picked the word history, because I had such a history with my husband. I have no history with these men. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to build that foundation. Not to say I can't love. I don't know that I could love in that way. And I want that again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I want that again.
And that could be difficult, right? Because
Yeah.
again, you're talking about an experience post losing a spouse,
Yeah.
and having that healthy, loving relationship. And how do you then kind of move into after that? Like how does that work? So we're going to actually unpack that as well, because as we talk through the segmentation of this topic, we want to get to that point of we want to talk about how we're evolving in these loving and healthy relationships from the beginning. And then there are going to be elements of now what happens when we part. And there's two elements of parting, right? When we
Yes.
talk about loss, it's not just losing a husband in the physical sense, or, through death till us part,
Mhm.
because obviously but also losing them through, divorce and
Right.
separation.
Absolutely.
So we're definitely going to need to unpack that, because I think there are a lot of people are challenged in that area, right? Of how do we kind of move forward?
Yeah, Steph,
Because
I wanted to jump in if you
Go
didn't
ahead.
mind and talk about expand a little bit on what Gaga just said. That's why I
Mhm,
believe compatibility is so incredibly important,
mhm,
especially building on what she said about the history, because you don't have history with these people. I'm also
mhm,
currently dating, and because you don't have history with these people, you really have to find that common thread. Compatibility is so key. You had history with your husband, so you could find all those ways and parts that you are compatible and that you fit and that you complement each other. And
mhm,
going forward, I think it's so important to really hone in on how you two move in the world. What do you do? How do you handle situations, whether they be stressful or joyful, or how do you handle life's traumas or life's happiness and joy? How do you move in the world? How do you get up in the morning, and how are you as you're going through your day, and how are you when you come home in the evening? What
mhm.
makes you compatible? I think that goes hand in hand with the history that Gaga you just spoke about.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's actually a good point, because as you evolve through your relationship, and this kind of goes even back to the trust factor, right? There are so many things that you encounter throughout your relationship that if you don't have trust enough in the individual that you are with, it's hard to even get through those scenarios if you can't speak to them, if you can't, you don't have
Right,
a comfort level in that person.
right,
And when we speak of marriage and getting married with someone, I think, again, it goes back to what you both said. As far as a foundation is concerned, trust is very important, because it brings that level of comfort with that individual to be able to share your experiences and share how you're feeling, or what you're going through, and have that person to be that support mechanism for you in those challenging times, not
Right.
just in
absolutely.
the good, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, how are
so
you together? What does it look like?
yeah.
How, what does together mean to both
Mhm,
of you? What does it look like? How do you handle things? Are you the front line? Are you the first line of defense in your marriage or in your partnership?
mhm.
Or, you know, can anyone move through those lines and kind of then you find yourself pitting yourself against one another, things of that nature. So what does it look like? How do you move together? It's so important.
Now, do you feel, um, people say there's no relationship will survive without trust. Now we know we
Oh,
have
absolutely.
challenges, right? And particular people go through challenges in their marriages where they lose trust in their husband or wife. Can a relationship still survive without that level of trust?
Absolutely not, in my
No.
opinion.
No, I
Absolutely
agree.
not.
No.
Trust can break down and you can rebuild trust. It takes a lot of hard work, trust. And I personally believe in third party counseling. So if trust does break down and you have a desire to go further in the relationship and to keep the relationship going, I do believe that third party always helps,
Mhm,
because that third party will help you discover or uncover if you really can go any further. But once you lose trust and it's not rebuilt, and that can be with anything, it's not just infidelity. I think people often think of trust issues are solely infidelity issues or betrayal.
mhm, mhm,
Betrayal comes in many forms, right?
mhm,
Whether you betrayed my trust in speaking about something that's very personal, or if you've violated my space some way.
Right.
Those things are definitely trust, and trust for me starts as a mountain, and once you start chipping away and you level that mountain, unless you seriously commit to rebuilding that trust,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, no relationship will sustain. Absolutely not. Because you
I
don't
agree.
believe anything the person has to say.
Yeah.
And they don't believe what you have to say.
Right. And that's I mean, it's a huge detriment to a relationship. And I don't think people realize how big of a deal that trust level of trust is needed in a relationship. I mean, back to what you were saying about, say, infidelity or what have you. Having that comfort level in that person to not um and I'll say there's a level of respect as well, right?
Absolutely.
You
Right.
know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
With trust is that level of respect for that individual. I mean, if you're at the point where you're, you know, and we talk about infidelity in so many segments, when you're, checking phones or, what level enough, it's husband or wife, checking in and is one thing, but checking up just to check up because you're afraid of something because you don't trust that partner enough to
Mm-hmm.
believe that what they're doing is the right thing for you and respecting you and the
As opposed to
marriage, the
just their
vows they
heart.
took,
Yeah.
that's not healthy, right? I mean, that's not really a level of healthiness. And if that's
And it
occurring,
goes a little further, Steph, because when you check up on that spouse or partner,
mhm,
you have to trust that what you find, because you're
yeah.
going to find something now.
Oh yeah.
If you look and you're going to find, but you have to trust that what you find still has your best interest at heart.
Yes.
And you have to trust yourself to know when it doesn't or when they
Right.
don't.
That's exactly right. Yep.
That's a very good point because we're
Yeah.
very quick to get caught up in the, I don't know, did what I see is what I think I saw, or what I heard is what I think I heard,
Right.
or, and then you start getting the people in your mind. So you talk about third party, which is actually good because I think when you talk about professionals from a relationship or counseling perspective, that's a good thing. I think we also get caught up in the whole historical nature of either our family environments or that level of trust because we start thinking about what's happened that we've experienced in life, maybe not directly per se in a relationship, but
Mhm.
also what others have experienced, or friends or family members or whatever have you. And we start listening to these things and we start saying, is that what's happening to me? Is that
Right.
what's happening to me?
Right.
So I love that you brought up this whole third party because I think we need to be clear when we say third party. If we're having distrust or levels of insecurity, because we could be insecure ourselves, and it may not
Mhm.
be our partner that has a problem. It's just a level of insecurity. We have to find help to help us be more healthy in our
Right.
partnership,
You have to
Yep.
right?
trust yourself. You have to
Mhm.
trust yourself as well, or learn to trust yourself. Yeah.
Learn to trust yourself. I love that. And that's actually a good thing because the trust doesn't have to be I don't trust him or her. I may not trust myself in
Right.
what I'm feeling or
And
what
you're
I see or
projecting,
what
and
I
you might
think,
project that.
and you're
Yeah.
projecting that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So I love that. Because again, I mean, it's very important, and it goes into this whole thing about when we even think about, for better and for worse. We think about, fighting fairly. We think about, because every relationship has conflicts. If somebody tells you they have never had a
Don't
disagreement
believe them.
ever in their relationship, they're lying.
They're lying.
Yep.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't care if
Yeah.
your name is President Obama, President and Mrs. Obama. If you say you don't have any difficulties or challenges, or like you said, Steph, conflict,
Mhm.
it's not true, because we're all human, and humans don't are not always congruent. Humans are not always, in sync with one another.
Right.
Absolutely. We all have our own hearts and thoughts and feelings.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Excuse me.
Jane, what were some of the challenges we would say when we talk about conflict? And there's healthy disagreements, and then it leads, some are very unhealthy, and we could talk about what's actually unhealthy versus healthy. But when we speak of healthy and loving relationships, that comes with
Excuse me.
disagreements. It comes with disagreements because, to your point, Tony, if you are still your own individual, right?
Yep.
And you still have your own thoughts and ideas. And I like that, also there's that compatibility
Mhm.
part, but it doesn't mean that everything that all your thoughts and dreams and whatever have you are going to 100% align to what your spouse or mate agrees to, right? So there comes the discussions. Here comes
Mhm.
the discussions in a marriage that a lot of people don't really discuss prior to marriage, right? Or prior to getting into a long-term serious relationship.
You talking about it today. You bringing it now.
What does that look like? Because, again, and I think this is probably even, and in just my opinion, one of the reasons why so many people decide not to wed per se, because they have their own lives and thoughts and ideas, and they're trying to find somebody who kind of fits that, and they're maybe afraid of connecting with someone because it doesn't align with everything that they want, right? So here's like, where do you kind of bridge the line of what makes sense, what doesn't. So from
Right.
a marriage standpoint, or a long-term relationship, I'll say, because a lot of people are not married and they're in long-term relationships, what are your thoughts, Jane, on this whole, when we talk about conflict, we talk about for better and for worse. What does conflict look like, or what did conflict look like in your marriage? And how did you manage through those conversations, those discussions?
Well, I mean, being married very young and having the odds against us, like I said before, we clung to each other because we loved each other. We knew what we had was going to work. But the conflict really came from outsiders butting in
Mm.
versus us. And that's where our conflict came.
Mhm.
Mother, father, father-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law. I have to say I had a wonderful mother-in-law.
Mhm.
I had a sister-in-law that sucked. Man, she was horrible. My
Mm.
husband's sister. She was the mother-in-law of all hell, but the sister-in-law. And my husband and her were very close. And then I came
Mm.
into the picture, total resentment.
Mm.
She wanted to tell me what kind of bedroom set to buy. I mean, it was not a good uh, thing for him and I until we drew boundaries with her.
Mm.
And then we were able to move forward with a healthier relationship with her once she understood what we expected of her in our relationship, because it came to a point where my husband was like, that's it, you can't be in our lives.
Good for
Mm.
your
And
husband. Good for your husband.
yeah,
Great for
my
your
husband,
husband.
no, I have to tell you, from the time we met, he always had my back.
That's
Always.
the key.
That's the
That's the
key.
key
Always.
to what you're talking about,
Yes.
Gaga. That is the key, because if
Yep.
you have a partner that you all are not the first line of defense together,
Mhm.
if you
That's right.
two didn't come to an agreement, and I love that you said we decided that we had to create boundaries and she
Mhm.
had to respect our boundaries.
Yes.
If they were just your boundaries, it
Mhm.
wouldn't have worked. And I
Mhm.
Right.
love that you said that it was a we instead of a you
Mhm.
situation, because hearing how close he may have been to his sister, it sounds like he truly put his wife first.
Mm.
He did, and she resented that until we were able to, oh God, I don't even know how to say this, but until we were able to infiltrate her into our relationship in a healthy way so
Mm.
that she learned where she was in our relationship.
Mm.
But she as the years went on, she did start to respect our marriage.
Mhm.
But I got to tell you, every time she saw just a little bit of trouble, she was right there pounding,
Right.
and
Right.
he would
Right.
stop. He'd go, listen, this is between me and my wife. You butt out. You have no business in it. And like I said, from the time we even met each other before we even started dating, he always had my back. And he always told me, the moment he saw me, he fell in love with me. He always told me that when he saw me. We were sophomores in science class. He said he knew he was going to marry me. And I think, coming from similar backgrounds, same religion, same, we were both Italian. And so there's a certain, you're expected to be a certain way. Okay. My father constantly was saying to me, you're my only daughter. You must marry Catholic. You must marry Italian. Don't bring anybody else home seriously unless they are those two things. Now, he didn't care if they treated me like crap or not. It didn't matter. If they were Catholic and Italian, that was good. My husband did not treat me like crap. He went toe to toe with my father to defend me, my mother, his own father.
Wonderful.
And that's what I'm saying to you. He always had my back. And even if we didn't agree when we got in the car, no one knew that in public.
That's the key too.
Yes.
No one knew that in
We both
public.
said it at the same
Yes.
time, right? That's the key too. I can speak to the other side of that coin where I felt, and I preface this with my perception and my feeling, because everybody's perception, opinion, and feeling is from their perspective, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if you speak to my ex will probably say, not probably, I know my ex would say something different. And I get that. This is my perspective and my feeling. I speak to the other side of that, where the trust broke down between the two of us because I felt like my back was never had, especially
Yeah.
when it came to outside people,
Right.
whether it was family, mine or his, friends, mine or his. I felt like we weren't the first line of defense in our marriage.
Right.
I felt like he didn't have my back. And in his mind, he did have my back, but in my mind, he did not. So perception is reality sometimes, right? So
Right.
I come from the other side of that coin, where people we try to incorporate in our lives, as you spoke about, Gaga, they were still incorporated into our lives, even though they were detrimental to our
Right.
lives. And oftentimes I felt like my back was not had, and that essentially broke down the trust and led to the deterioration of my very long-term marriage. I was married almost 22 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it led to that deterioration. Listen, I'm on the sistership and I'm keeping it real. I'm being
No,
honest.
hey, we want real.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything.
No.
We
Yeah,
want real, Tony.
I definitely speak from the other side.
Yeah.
of
I
that.
mean, we had our moments. Oh my God. I mean, I could tell you came into our house earlier in our marriage. There were pictures hanging all over because, he'd punched the wall. But I was like, I would not let things go. I would follow him out. He'd like, just let me go outside and cool down. No, blah, 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 but I have to, he never hit me. He never did any of that, but he would get angry. We had a lot of challenges in our marriage. We
course,
had a lot of interference in our marriage.
Yeah.
We had kids early. Our friends were out, boogieing and having a good time. And we were, I was cooking meatballs for Sunday dinner. I mean, we were a young couple in an old age.
Yeah.
And so as the kids got older, like I said before, your love phases of that love and relationship changes. Your needs for each other changes, and you build this history, right? And I feel for me, when I took those vows in front of God at that altar, and, until death do us part, for me, I'm still very married in my heart to my husband,
Mm,
very married to him. And I'll be a widow for 18 years in August. And I still cannot get past some of that in some of the relationships I've been in since he
yeah,
died.
yeah,
And it's hard for them to understand that. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to date widowers. That's all I'm going to date. Oh my goodness. I mean, half of them sit there and cry and talk about their wives, and you know, there's so much baggage. Not to say I don't have baggage. Oh hell, I got lots of baggage, But my point is, my therapist keeps saying to me, you've got to stop comparing
yeah,
Sure.
him to them. And it's
It-
not about
it-
him. It's
there's no
about the
comparison.
history. It's about what I expect this time in a marriage. I wanted, we had we were just so familiar with each other. We
Hey,
were
we're
so
getting feedback.
comfortable.
Hey, Mama
Yay,
T.
Deb. Hi, Deb.
I think we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, I hear
Hey, Mama C.
familiar with each other. Hey, it's so comfortable. Yay, Deb.
hey!
Okay, so
Since Marsha couldn't seem to get on, I'm backing her up today.
Good.
Hold
Good
on.
to see you.
Yeah, I hear you totally, but I do agree with your therapist, Gaga. The comparison never works.
I know.
Because you set the expectation up is very high, and it's
Yeah.
very difficult to attain because nobody is going to be is going to match the history.
right.
And honestly, logically, in my brain, I know that. And
But in
I
your
have,
heart is something different.
yeah. So, people will say to me, don't you get lonely? And I go, no, but I do feel alone sometimes. Like when I have decisions to make.
Yeah.
When
I've
I
learned to
have,
say I'm not alone and I'm not lonely. I'm just not involved in a romantic relationship right now.
yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
new answer. I did want to ask Steph if we could talk a little bit about till death do we part, though, because
Yeah.
I have a different definition of that.
Yeah.
Till
Yeah.
death do we part. Death doesn't only mean a physical, actual death. It also
Right.
can mean the death of your spirit. It can
Yes.
mean the death of
Good point.
your being, and that's what happened with me, and that's what released me from my marriage. There had been a severe death, and it was the death of my spirit and the death of who I wanted to be and who I am still yet becoming and growing to be. That you brought up until we part. Until
Right.
death do we part. Yeah, death not only means a
And
physical
and Tony, how did you come back from that? How did you rekindle your own spirit?
a lot of therapy, a lot of therapy, which I'm
Yeah.
still in. And the key for me is learning to like myself. Yes, we always talk about loving ourselves. For me, until I learn to like myself, and that means every part of me, the loud, the soft, the crazy, the sane, the bossy, whatever encompasses Tony, I have to learn to like all of her.
Absolutely.
And then I can move on to the love. And that is what is propelling me forward and giving me the confidence to say, and other romantic relationships are here and they're coming, and I get to navigate through it all. Yeah.
You know,
And
I
that's-
think, I
Go ahead,
think
Mama.
that when we can say, the moment we can say, I am happy without being in a romantic relationship, that's when we're ready for a relationship.
Talk
Yeah.
about it.
You know what I'm
Talk
saying?
about it. Say it.
Unfortunately, everybody's looking, most people are looking for somebody else to love them. But the challenge with that is you're going to run, if you don't love yourself, you're going to run into a lot of people who don't love themselves. And so if
Right.
they don't love themselves, how do they know how to love you?
Yes.
Right.
You know what
Yes.
I'm
And you can
saying?
spot it a mile
We
away.
have to know
Quite
how to
honestly,
love, and
you
that
can
begins
spot it.
with ourselves.
Yeah.
And they can spot it in you. They can
Yes.
spot you
Yes.
can spot it in them, and they can spot it in you. They can
Oh,
sense it out in
absolutely.
you.
And
Absolutely.
that's where levels of manipulation, you have people who manipulate that because if they're aware and
Yeah.
conscious of how you
about it.
love yourself, they use that as a mechanism to also treat you the way you treat yourself.
Right.
Or the way you
Absolutely.
view yourself.
Absolutely.
And you have to, all of this is so true. Being married so long, so young, having kids, and then everything else that came along with that.
Mhm.
When I was finally alone, I learned to be still
Mm,
and peaceful.
Absolutely.
So when I was alone and still, I didn't have craziness going on in my brain. I
mm,
was peaceful.
Yeah.
And I learned that once I learned to do that, I was able to move forward and be happy.
Oh,
mhm.
absolutely.
I'm being serious. In my own brain, I didn't have all these thoughts going on. I was able to sit peacefully and love who I was, love where I'm at, and that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when we can sit still with ourselves and be peaceful and contented within ourselves,
Mhm.
that's a magic
Mhm.
all in itself.
Great word.
And that magic
Great word.
transcends out into the outer world,
Yeah.
and it attracts the right people. But when
Mhm.
we're out there running around looking for somebody to love us, but we haven't learned to love ourselves and be okay with who
Right.
we are and where we are at any given phase of our development, then it's almost like the dog chasing its tail. We're
Yeah.
constantly going to be chasing something we'll never catch. And
Mhm.
what
Right.
we do end up catching will be a bad dose of a relationship that won't create the caliber of connection that is healthy and long term.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And there's a need for balance. So I agree to a level of making sure you're healthy with yourself
Right.
and loving yourself and liking yourself. I mean, because we have to like ourselves, right? I mean, there's
Right.
certain things that we might
You
not
have to
like
you have to like
within
yourself.
ourselves, but you
Oh,
have to like even
absolutely.
your
Every
flaws.
pound of you.
Every
Yeah.
pound of me, honey, and I
Every
got plenty.
pound.
I got
Hello,
plenty
me
to
too.
love. Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Me
but
too.
but that is what now when you transform that into or bring that into a relationship, now you've worked on you or you're conscious and you're aware of who you are,
Yep.
right? And that is what you're bringing in or you're looking for in your relationship is someone to balance that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not
Great
about
point.
who's on top and who's on the bottom. It's
Great
a
point.
balancing act between
Absolutely.
two individuals who are bringing their individuality and their love and like for self
And
that
baggage.
now they can build, right?
And all their
I
baggage.
love that
and all
stuff.
their baggage.
I
And all
love
their baggage.
that.
And I want to kind of bring this back because this goes also into hand in hand and how you, I want to say fight fair, how you fairly treat one another when you have conflict or discussion
Woo!
or disagreements in
Mhm.
your relationship where things don't align. There's a balance in the relationship as far as who you bring into, each of you are bringing into.
Mhm.
But there's also an element of how do we then bring that into the discussions that we're having, that we have a level of discord as it relates to our, what we're aligned with, right? Because we're not
Right.
going to be, again,
Great
100%
I'm
aligned
gonna
on
let y'all handle that because that fight fair, I haven't learned that yet.
But you
So,
know what, Steph? One of the mantras
listen,
I created for
where
myself
are we?
years
The
ago
sistership, right?
was I'd rather be happy than right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
see,
yeah.
that's where
Right.
That's
relationships
hard.
come into
That's
battle.
hard.
Everybody,
I
both
know.
parties are trying to be right. I'm
That's
right,
a
you're wrong.
beautiful. That's
It
a
doesn't
beautiful
matter who's
quality, but
right
that's
or
not easy to
wrong.
achieve.
You know,
Right.
if you're loving somebody, you're understanding and being compassionate of who that person is, what they believe, what is good for them, and you stand down. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt to
That's not
stand
easy to do,
down.
no,
I mean,
Mama
it takes a
C.
strong, powerful, got it going on person to stand down.
It does. That is a very, I admit that is truly one of my flaws that I have to consciously work on in terms of being happy opposed to being right. And what I am learning, notice I said learning because this is a difficult thing for me. I'm not there yet, but I am striving. I'm learning that I don't always get it right.
Yeah.
That's what I have to tell myself. You know what? I know you think you're right now. I know you're digging your heels in, but you don't always get it right. I don't always get it right because that I think will help me to continue to grow and be not only healthy but be mature, because I think it takes a really grounded, conscious, mature person, like you said, Mama C, to stand down and be happy opposed to being right. Because you might not be right, even though you think you are. You just might not. I might not get it right. I might not get it right in that in this instance or that instance, whatever it is. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And you actually made a good point, Tony, because you talk about I may not get it right for this particular point or that point.
Right.
One thing that some people have a habit of doing is throwing the kitchen sink in when they're having a disagreement about something. They still haven't resolved all the other conflicts or disagreements they've had, and they're throwing the whole kitchen sink in.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
You either have to agree to disagree and move on and be happy with whatever that is rather than being right. Back to your point, Mama C.
Absolutely.
And move on from that, because if you continue to keep chipping away and chipping away and chipping away and adding, when you get to the point, it's an escalation at that point. It's an escalation, and it's not healthy to have conflict that becomes this escalation point where you can't resolve it, and now you're fighting unfairly, right? Now you're attacking one another constantly.
So I'm gonna call Mama C the next time I'm fighting, because I need to learn how to fight fair. Mama C, I need help.
You know what? I'm always here. I'm always here, Tony. And you know what?
I need help.
It took me some years. You know, I mean, I'm heading toward my 70s. It took me some time to get to the point where I realized. But you know what? I had to back off and spend time with myself. And that time wasn't a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 years. I have spent, I'd have to say, the last, probably 10 years to myself. Getting to know myself, being with myself, understanding myself, loving myself, and liking my flaws, my failures, and all those things that, you know, we perceive don't make us wonderful. Or whatever it is.
Can you give us some tips, Mama C? Can you give us some?
You got to take the time. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people are still looking for somebody while they're working on themselves. No, work on yourself first. Be prepared, because it makes us able to see people beyond what they want us to see.
Can you give us some tips on fighting fair, Mama C? Because you seem to have really gotten that down. Give us a couple of tips. I need them.
Well,
and I'm sure somebody else in the audience needs them too.
You just have to keep telling. It's almost like an affirmation reinforcement process that we do
like what?
On a daily
Please
basis.
help me out.
And we
like
say,
what?
like, you know what? This too shall pass. This
Okay.
is not important. Next week, this won't be important. Next year won't be important. You know, right now, what's important is my happiness, his happiness, or whoever your partner is. And let's just not. Let's agree not to fight, because fighting only generates additional strife in the relationship. It adds a whole lot of unnecessary garbage to the relationship. You know, you have to keep telling yourself, you know what, this is not that important. I love this person. I love myself. I want to be happy. I want peace of mind. Let me tell you, peace of mind is a superpower. Love is the most powerful superpower, but when we have peace of mind,
You won't do anything to sacrifice it.
you will not do anything to sacrifice it. And you realize none of that's important in the
Yeah.
long term. In the
Mhm.
long run, it's just not that important. And like I said, next week, next year, you won't even remember it.
That's a great
That's
point.
that's a great point, Mama C, because I agree. I think, and that even, it's, and I know this is relationship as far as, with a partner, but that's in any circumstance. Like, you have
Right.
to, you have
Absolutely.
to take a step back and say, and maybe at that moment you're fired up and you have to say woosah for a moment and breathe
Pause.
and
Yeah.
say, let me take a quick second. And I think it's hard for us sometimes because of all the emotion that's involved in it at that point. We
And-
have to breathe and say, to Mama C's point, is this really going to matter in
Love
the
it.
next 10 minutes, next 6 months,
Love
year,
it.
2 years, or whatever have you? And if it doesn't, let's move on because I need to be
Love
happy.
it.
And,
I don't
and
Yes.
you know, it doesn't hurt to say to your partner, hon, I need a moment to put
Yes.
myself in check.
Yes.
Talk about it.
This
Okay.
ain't
I'll
about
do
you.
that.
This is about me. Please
I'll
give
do
me a
that.
moment to put so that I can put me in check because you and I and we are more important than anything we are disagreeing about at the moment.
You made
Yeah.
absolutely one of the and I was doing some research because Mama C, you are hitting it on the nail on the head. Is that they say when you're in a moment of escalation, you have to part ways because nothing's going to get resolved. Nobody's
It's true.
listening.
Nobody's listening to
Stand
each
down
other.
and stand back.
Exactly. Stand down and stand back. That's it. I like that. Stand down.
Somebody
and
in the chat just said something that right to this point, you don't want to argue with your partner. You have to listen to what they're saying and then you give your opinion. But the key is listening.
Man.
I agree with you, Hillary Evans. That's an excellent point. You all are teaching me and helping me today.
Hey, Hill.
Miss Hill, I tell you, we got a bunch of amazing people in our audience that's listening in, and that also have a lot of wisdom. So we thank you for giving us that. But yeah, I mean, there's the setting aside time to really reflect on what it is that disagreement is about, and saying coming back together at some point when you're both ready. It doesn't have to be immediate.
Right.
Absolutely.
It takes,
Right. Right.
I don't know how you feel about this, but there was this old adage about don't go to bed angry at each other.
Right.
You know what? People do go to bed angry at each other.
Yes, they
Right.
do.
Sometimes it takes more than just 10 minutes
Right.
to reflect. It might
Right.
take you 24 hours to get out of your
Great
head.
point.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
say, you know
Great
what? I
point.
just need this space to just get away from, just
Right.
like really be in
Right.
my space, in my head.
That's a good myth buster. That's a great myth buster.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we say these sayings and we don't really get the meaning behind them and the detriment of them. If that's not necessarily true. You may try and strive to not go to bed angry, but maybe you're angry, and maybe sleeping on it is that time in that period you need to pause and to calm down and to come back with a fresh new perspective of maybe I'm just not right this time.
Yeah.
Does this really matter?
Absolutely. And I find that when I'm at my most craziest, if I put on meditation music and allow myself to kind of wrap myself inside the music and recognize that I need this moment for me, then I find that what happens is I'm able to come to a better place in space sooner than later. Because if you don't have a tool or a tip that helps you to get beyond that, what happens is you tend to dwell on it for longer than you need to.
Right.
So put on that meditation music, sit back, chill out, feel yourself.
I
Allow
dance. I put on
yourself
something and I dance.
Music.
Not sink into the bowels of the situation, because
about
the further you sink, the funkier the situation gets.
Talk about it. Mama C bringing it, right?
And let me tell you, sometimes at that moment in time, something got triggered that was beyond what that issue was,
Absolutely.
or that
Another great point.
that you're getting
Triggers.
exactly. I mean, there could be other things, other triggers that are going on that will
Mhm.
not let you fight fairly or just get to
Absolutely.
that escalation
Absolutely.
point.
You know, sometimes there are triggers that we aren't even aware of.
True.
And case in point, I had someone in my life last year who who did something that made me realize that I still had rejection and boundary issues from
Okay.
my childhood that I had not
Okay.
dealt with.
Yeah.
And we weren't romantically involved, but I realized that the rejection that I was feeling was something I didn't even know that was still hiding out in the cracks and crevices
Mhm.
of my soul.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Carrying
it
on the
made me
Did you trust
aware.
that person to bring that out to you though, Mama C?
Excuse
Because
me?
did you trust that person when that person brought that to your attention? Did you trust that person that what they may say or what they're saying has some validity? Because a lot of times I know I have difficulty with trusting what you're saying, even though it might be true. I'm skeptical. So did you trust that person
Well,
that they had some validity in bringing that forth to you?
they didn't bring it forth to me. It was what they did that made me realize
Okay.
that I was
Mm,
feeling rejected.
got
Okay.
it.
And there was another something going on, and I didn't even realize it. This was a trigger that I was unaware of. So I think
Mm,
that as we grow and evolve, we're constantly learning about ourselves.
yeah.
And so I realized, you know what? I have to be careful about letting people into my life who are not trustworthy enough
Mm,
to care about me,
mm,
Right.
care about what hurts me, what
Mhm.
I'm feeling. There's some people, they're in your life and they're not really in your life for you, they're in your life for them.
Mhm.
And so what happens is they will do things that will ultimately trigger something that you need to be mindful of, that you need to face.
yeah.
I learned at that point I needed to face the fact that there was still some sense of reject. I still had some kind of feelings about being rejected,
Mm,
Mhm.
and that wasn't his thing to deal with. That was my thing. Once
Right.
Absolutely.
it was triggered and I recognized, then I knew what I needed to do.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
sometimes we trust people beyond their ability to be trustworthy.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Right.
Yes.
so, it
Right.
gave me an understanding of the fact that I have to be very cautious about people in my life and their understanding who I am and what has infected my life and thus affected how I respond to other
Right.
people.
Right.
So I think no matter what, and Tony, you talk about, you're still working. Guess what? We're all still working, and I think as we go
Okay.
and we grow, there will be many things that we learn about ourselves, but we have to be willing to face that. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to
Right.
face
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
ourselves.
I'm
Right.
learning to face definitely the people that I have in my life that I trust, that what they are telling me is something I have to look at.
Right.
And I have to be honest about this too. That was one thing my ex used to always say, you don't trust what I'm saying to you. And now that we are not together, there are some things that he used to say that I now realize, yes, he was absolutely right, that I needed to look at. So I'm now translating that to people who are in my life now,
Mm,
today. Take a
Right.
listen to what they're saying, because it may have some validity and it may help me, but I have to be able to trust them that what they're saying is in my best interest, and it's not, like you said, to just harm me or just for their own benefit.
Mhm.
Because if I do feel like they're in my life for their own benefit only, it's time to extricate. It's time,
Yeah.
time
Right.
to excavate.
Yeah,
And
and I
yeah.
think we have to be willing to follow our intuitive senses, Tony. Not everybody in our life is
Right.
trustworthy, and not
Absolutely.
everybody in our lives are the things they do are not always to our benefit.
Right. And it
But I
Right.
think paying attention to our intuitive senses, because our intuitive, I always tell people, our intuitive senses are literally a compass that guides
Mhm.
us.
yes,
Yeah.
But
that
if
good.
we're not going
Good.
to
Right.
follow those intuitive senses, if we're going to reject those intuitive senses, if we're going to she poo poo those intuitive senses, then we're opening ourselves up to walk right into a web of pain, misery, and suffering in relationships with people who are also in the midst of pain, misery, and suffering, but they're trying to front and not face what's going on in their lives. We have to stop not facing the things that are actually happening in our lives. Pay attention, listen to our intuitive senses, and be willing to stand down, step back, and assess ourselves.
Mhm.
Sometimes, we get real huffy when someone tells us something, or we get angry because something doesn't go our way. We've got to learn to cool out when it comes to all of that, because
Yeah.
none of that is going to get you into and throughout a lifelong healthy relationship.
Yeah. I think when we talk about trust, and we'll move on because I know we want to get into until we part, right? And there's two pieces to that. There's someone actually said, I trust all people until someone gives me a reason not to trust them, which is, again, it comes back to the experiences you have with individuals in your life. But with women, we do have that intuitive sense in
Mm-hmm.
most cases where
That
there's
gut.
something
Yeah.
that
The
is a
gut
red flag,
feeling. Yep.
right? Something is
Yep.
a red flag. God
Yep.
given, whatever it is. I mean, there's a red flag there, and sometimes we ignore it, and sometimes we just, we do actually address it. Um, we talked about individuals in our lives. Actually, Jane, you made the comments about, how, from a sister-in-law perspective, and what was detrimental to your relationship because of allowing other influences coming
Right.
into your circle. And that's the other thing I want to just quickly talk about is that, when we think about the outside, we talk about Tony trusting people. There are individuals that, yes, what they have adds value to what we need to internalize, right? And then there's those individuals who get involved in your relationships, who try to tell you what to do in your relationships or how they would see things. And I always say there's always a level of individuality by every person that's in their own relationship. You don't
Right.
have my personality. You don't have my husband's personality. You
Right.
don't know how
You're seeing it
we
through your own eyes. Right.
exactly. You don't see it from my own eyes. You don't maneuver the same way.
Right.
And what we may see as a conflict, or what we may see as a good thing, somebody else might be, in your ear, oh, he shouldn't do that, or he shouldn't say that, or, yeah, based on my experience, this is so sometimes we have to be very careful who influences our relationships,
I agree.
Absolutely.
because
I
Yeah.
that
agree.
right there can lead to that level of resentment, distrust, and break in a relationship that could have been solved for, resolved by two individuals working through that together.
The minute you say to me what I should and
Yeah.
should not do, it's a
Mm-hmm.
wrap. I'm
Yep.
turned off to you
Yep.
because you're giving me a directive. You're not giving me an opinion or a perspective. You're giving me a directive. Don't
Mm-hmm.
the minute you say should, you use the word should or should not.
Yep.
Wrap.
Yep.
I'm done. I don't
Yep.
want to hear anything you have to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing my mother-in-law, and I always say this because it's the one thing that stuck with me on the day before my wedding. My mother-in-law said to me, there was some little bit of discussion or conflict going on, whatever, in the background. And she said to me, don't you ever allow anyone to be involved in your relationship between you and your husband. That is between the both of you. She goes, I don't care if you want to tear the curtains down in your home. That's between you and your spouse.
That's
Never
right.
allow anybody to interject from that perspective. And,
Yeah.
I take that so to my heart, because I do believe, although people may have your best interest in mind or speak to you from a place of experience or wisdom or whatever have you, you also have to flush through what's real and what's not, and how is that making your relationship better, right, versus worse. Because people who really want the best for your relationship, especially if you're in a good place, it's just you have these little things that are going on that you need to work through. You have to be careful who influences that relationship, because at the end
Right.
of the day, I have to make a decision for me and my husband.
Absolutely.
Me and my
And we have to respect that.
we have
We
to
have to
exactly, and
respect
people need to respect
you
that.
and your decision. I have to interject here. I had a friend who really called me on the carpet about she told me some things about her relationship that I found quite disturbing and quite detrimental. And I started with, I can't stand him. Nope. I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to be friendly. I don't want to be kind. And I went to her house and, hello, how are you? Very cold or whatever. And she called me on the carpet. She said, but I choose him. And if you're my friend and choose me, you have to respect that I choose him. And I was so glad she called me on the carpet for that. And I apologized and made amends to say, because I love you, what I agree with and don't agree with has no merit. This is your relationship.
Absolutely.
Glad you called me on the carpet about it. And you're absolutely right. You choose him. And as long as you choose him and I choose you, I choose the both of you. And I had to make real amends and apologize and treat that person the way she would want me to treat that person. And she brought up the fact that there were times you told me things about your relationship and your husband. And when I saw him on the street, I didn't treat him any differently.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So I
growth.
wanted to just chime in on that. Yeah.
That's growth. I mean, that's maturity. That's growth. And believe me, I've
Absolutely.
struggled with that myself, because I've seen situations that I'm like, oh, that's why it's so hard. And I tell people, be careful what you tell your friends and your family about your
That's true.
relationship, because
Because you'll get over it, but we
Right.
don't
we
necessarily
don't get over it all
Right.
the time.
Right.
And we
Right.
get frustrated when you're back into the same cycle. And we're like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you? Don't come to me. I always tell people, don't come to me with your big problems unless you decide. You have to make a decision for yourself. I
Absolutely.
can't tell you what to do in your relationship. I can
Absolutely.
only give you my experiences, listen to you. I'll listen, but I'm always going to tell you, you have to make a call for yourself. What do you want? Not what
True.
Tanya wants or anybody
And not what somebody tells you.
Exactly.
It is what you want, what truly what you want, or are you going on what somebody told you, or are you going on what somebody raised you on, or what somebody told you was supposed to be the certain way? What is it that you truly want?
And you know what? One of the things that we as females have to do is stop running to our friends and telling them what we think we saw.
Oh Lord.
You know what? I have a girlfriend.
Talk about it, Mama
A
C.
girlfriend and I
Coming
were
through.
having lunch
Coming
in an
through,
outdoor
y'all.
cafe when I lived in New York. And who come walking into the cafe but our other girlfriend's husband and another woman holding hands? Never. I never said anything to her because, first of all, she knew what the deal was, because she had mentioned to us before she thought he was fooling around.
Mhm.
Well, you know what? It's not my place to come and snitch on him. You handle that situation. If you know there's something going on, find a way to deal with it effectively. I'm not going to have you mad at me later on when the two of y'all make up because I came and ran and told you something thinking I'm being a good girlfriend. No, that's not being a good girlfriend. That's minding somebody else's damn business. Get the hell out of
Well,
other
do you not
people's
say
business
anything at
and
all,
allow
Mama
them to
C?
handle whatever's going on in it. Now, ultimately, they end up divorcing. She remarried somebody else, had a much better relationship. But you know what? It was going to be what it was going to be. It was
Right.
what it was. And I didn't want to be in the middle of all of that and having her angry with me later on when they get back together, or they
Right.
get all cozy and kissy
Yep.
face. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have
That's
to
never
learn.
But what about the situation when you know of some information, or you perceive of some information that ends up coming out true, and then your friend finds out that you knew and you didn't say anything,
right.
and they're upset with you about that?
Okay, well then let them be upset. I'm minding my own business. And the bottom line here is, you can't go running and telling everything that you think you see, or trying to be a good friend. Being a good friend is not always running and telling what you've seen or what you know.
Mhm.
And if your friend is going to get pissed off with you to the extent that the relationship, it has no value anymore, bye. Goodbye.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? Because friends, I would say to my friend, you know what? I was hurt by what I saw. And I knew that you would be hurt. And I could not hurt you like that. But I know that you know what the deal is. And you are wise enough to handle it. To
Yeah.
But
handle
I would
your
say
business.
something to
That's
him,
not
though.
my business. Okay.
I would say something to him. I
that's
would.
that's the level. That's the area. I think that's where the
I would say,
differences.
I would say, listen, I saw X, Y, and Z. I don't know what
Exactly.
it means. She's not going to hear it from me, but I guarantee you need to watch yourself, mind your P's and Q's, because it doesn't look good. Or
Right.
but you have to be you have to be a bestie. You have to be a very close friend, and I don't use the term friend lightly, before I say anything to anybody. And actually, me and my besties have discussed that, what we expect each other if we were in that situation. If
Mm,
you saw my husband, or I saw your husband, or your mate, or whatever,
right.
we've really actually discussed what we would expect from one another. Would you want me to come to you and say something to you? Would you want me to say something to him? And we worked that out beforehand, because I don't want to ever lose a friendship over something that I perceive, like you say, Mama C, because you don't know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And what
definitely
was,
a hard conversation.
I'm curious though, Tony, to know what was the majority rules on that.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
what did everybody decide?
It's 3 of us, and we all decided that we would handle it the way I said. I would speak to him first, let him know what's going on, what I see or what I thought, how you handle it, and I would strongly suggest that you discuss it with my bestie. I don't want to, so I suggest you discuss it with my bestie. But you are very right, Mama C. You got to be careful with how you bring that information.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to be
Bring that
very careful.
information at
And
all.
not every bestie can handle it. And we
That's
knew
right.
that this
That's
particular
right.
bestie was very fragile, anyhow. And we did not want to send her over the cliff. And like I said, she ultimately realized and got the situation under control, divorced him, went on with her life, remarried to a guy who was very good to her and treats her treats her like a woman, treats her and respects her the way that she should be. So, I'm glad it all worked out that way. But this particular bestie, very fragile person, and so, like I said, we knew, or at least I knew, my other girlfriend, her and the bestie always had arguments, but
Yeah, and
I
it
knew.
also, doesn't it depend on the situation, though?
Yeah, it does
Like
depend
what
on
it
the
is, because
situation,
the
and
Sistership
the
Network
person.
just said, I had to tell one of my friends before, when her husband called me at 3 a.m. in the morning. Call me at 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm telling.
Yeah. My
Call
question
me
is, what the heck are they doing calling you at 3 in the
if
morning?
you're doing something
Absolutely.
directly, or you're trying something directly with me,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
feel uncomfortable with it,
Oh, yeah.
hell to the yes. I'm telling,
Yeah.
call me a
Yeah.
snitch, because I'm
Absolutely.
telling that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If it involves me, it's a different thing. You know,
Yes.
and I agree with
Yes.
you, Tony. I would have had to say something about that. You don't,
Yeah, you don't
you
call
can't
me
be
at
my
3 in the morning.
bestie's husband and call me at 3 o'clock in the morning for what? Will you set
Yeah.
me up for what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
not.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
if
not
it's
gonna work.
somebody else, I believe that's why Mama C has all this wisdom, and I'm so grateful she's sharing it with us,
Yes.
because I know I need help. I agree that you have to really temper what you say to other people, but
Mhm.
if what you do involves me and I feel uncomfortable or feel some kind of way, yeah, it's time to snitch.
Absolutely. You're not gonna
So,
have me walking
ladies,
around with that albatross on my back.
right. And what I want to do is move on to, because this, I'm telling you, we could be 2, 3, 4 topic, whatever. This right here goes back to this whole trust element, right? We talked about the foundation of loving and healthy relationship, trust being one of those factors, and then how you kind of maneuver you through your relationship, how you fight fair, and how you manage through that. But here we are now, and we've got two elements where you're parting ways. One is through divorce separation, and one is through losing someone in life. What do we take from those experiences to help us to move on? And I know that's a huge thing to unpack, but what are some of the things that we have noticed or realized through that experience that now puts us in a position whether we need to heal to love again, or we already know what some of those elements were that we took from those experiences that we can move on with? And Jane, I want to talk about till death do us part. And then obviously, Tony, you have a whole different perspective. They're both losses. We
Right.
already established that.
Right.
They're both absolute losses. But let's
So,
kind of unpack that.
yeah, so I have been honored to start a grief group. Okay, it originally started for widows only, but I realized that, and it is only for women, because in my experience of going to these support groups, men do have a tendency to use those groups as a dating service.
Okay.
I'm very serious.
Wow.
Interesting.
And
Believe
yeah,
that.
so
Yeah.
so I decided to open it up to loss, women in grief. Now, women come who grieve a dead husband, a dead child, a dead animal,
You didn't close that refrigerator.
a divorce.
That refrigerator.
And what I learned through the divorce part of women was the loss is the loss. You grieve. You still grieve.
You have to.
And my one friend who buried a husband, then married someone and divorced, she said, divorce is worse because he's still alive.
Mm.
She said, my first husband didn't choose to die right, immediately. He died. There was no control. Divorce, she felt like she failed.
Wow.
And so the group did open up. We've all experienced it, either watched a mother, an aunt, an uncle, someone go through a divorce. And I found in this group the divorce women that would come truly grieved because the spouse, they watched them go on. And I want to throw this out there, and all due respect to all men listening, I have also found it seems easier for men to move on than women.
I don't know that I think it's easier. I think men, all respect to you brothers out there, listen, don't come at me.
We got the brothership in the audience.
Okay. This is my perspective. I don't know that I believe that it's easier for them to move on, or that it is imperative that they move on. Number one, because they sometimes need to show that it was not them. They are not the reason for the divorce. Or number two, another reason is because they don't want to be alone. They are used to that companionship. They are used to that camaraderie, used to things being in a relationship, and they don't want to not be in a relationship. But I don't know necessarily easier for them to on. And you also got to factor in the whole male to female ratio in terms of relationships, in terms of being able to find a single man or a single woman. I think there are different factors that play into that. So I don't know that for me that it sound that men find it easier. I do think they are, for lack of a better term, in some circumstances, a little more desperate.
I think, and I agree with you too, Tony. I think men become very connected to the perks of marriage.
Thank you.
But they don't want the commitment that comes with marriage.
That's what I meant.
Easier because they're leaving behind the commitment. They go in search of the perks of being in a marriage or a live-in relationship. So I think that's one of the biggies, because they go running because they want the perks. So it's easy for them to jump into another relationship because they're keeping in mind the perks that come with it. And they're leaving behind the commitment, not realizing that when you get into this next relationship, there's commitment too. So you're going to get
bringing the same person to that next commitment.
Going to come also. So, so what you do as a man, you run from woman to woman to woman to relationship, looking for the benefits without wanting to make the commitment.
So we got the brothership chiming in here. And I think they're going to have a conversation around this now that we done sparked the flame.
But I would like to hear a men's perspective on some of this, because, being older, my mom was very submissive. I, on the other hand, was never that. But when you look at the generational gap of, being born back in the 1920s, you were expected to be and do certain things as a wife. My mother, when I got married, and as you all know, I was pregnant, and she said to me, remember, you have a duty to have sex with your husband. And it doesn't have to be all the time, 3-4 times a year. And I'm thinking, what the hell? She kidding me? And I don't condone my father cheating or beating. I don't condone that. But, how do you give a man sex 4 times a year? Come on, honey. It's the third quarter. Come on in. Come on.
Anniversary, New Year.
Every quarter, my father got sex. Think about that. It's like paying your taxes.
And that wouldn't work for me either. Every quarter. Yeah, no, we have. Houston, we have a problem.
I think the sex part is what got me into relationships and got me into trouble, because I was always rocking and rolling with the passion. I was like, I had a reputation at the hospital. My girlfriends, I'd come in, I'd have my knees all scraped up.
Oh, Lord.
Oh my God, she got rug burns on her knee. No, honey, those were
Here we
burns,
go.
okay?
Here we go.
Oh, that's a whole other show.
That's
all right. That's all right. Live, Mama C. No, it's not TMI. It's not TMI. Live, Mama C. That's right. Let me jump in. I know we're laughing.
Relationship, the physiology, the chemistry was powerful. And I wasn't thinking. I'm thinking, oh wow, we got this wild, powerful chemistry. We good. No,
Yeah.
it takes a whole hell of a lot more than
than
passion
physical.
and
But thank
chemistry
you, Mama
to make a
C.
healthy relationship.
Yup. Thank you, Mama C. See, we're laughing, right? And the host is saying, TMI, Mama C. No, it's not TMI. See, we got to talk about this stuff.
Yes, I agree.
And here's one of the issues I believe in our
I didn't say
community.
it.
And I say, when I say our community, I mean our community of women along racial lines, along ethnicity, whatever it is. In our community of women, we don't talk about this stuff. We don't talk about menopause.
Right.
We don't talk about passion. We don't talk about what it takes to sustain a healthy relationship. And then so when somebody with wisdom like Mama C coming through and telling us the truth, we all like, oh my gosh, oh no, I don't want to hear that. That's my mama. No, yes, tell us, Mama. Tell us, Mama. Let us know how you get down and how you make this thing last. I'm sorry, daughter. Tune out. Your mama giving us some information that we all need to hear.
So
And we
hold on,
all want to hear.
I gotta interject.
I have to
agree.
tell you.
I agree. I'll give you 1 second. I agree. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. And that's what the Sistership Network is about. So we talk about all this. We talk about this, that, and whatever. It's the reality of life. It is human nature.
Tell me about them. Tell me about those rug burn knees. Did it sustain it?
Wall burns, not rug burns.
We will take this
wall
topic.
burns, rug burns, out burns, in burns. Yup, I want to know it all.
Young women, I think the message we need to send to young women is that chemistry and passion and crazy wild sex does not a good relationship make. Okay, you got good, you had good sex, you're passionate, you're burning, you're on fire, but then after all of that is over, then what? And see, that's the part
but it's good to have that too. It's good to have that too now.
Oh, it is good to have that, but if you think that is what's going to build the foundation for a healthy relationship, you're wrong. And I can tell you, I've done it so many times, and finally I said, what the hell? You know, I feel like Stefania now. What the hell?
What the hell?
You know what? I say, woe to the person that does not have a relationship when their partner or a partner walks in, or a person walks into the room and those panties don't drop immediately. Woe to you that you've never felt that. Because honey,
no, you're right.
I'm not saying it needs to build a relationship.
Wait a minute.
But I'm saying it is okay to experience that unbridled passion and that
but don't confuse it with
makes
love.
Those panties drop the minute they walk into the room. I've had a couple, and I'm grateful
confuse
for
it with love, and that's the mistake we women make.
Absolutely, don't confuse it.
Passion with love.
That's
not
you
love.
who haven't had it.
Right.
Okay, so we've established, and I absolutely agree with you guys, is that you ladies, is that yes, although that passion, that fire, that sex, whatever have you, that does not necessarily mean you are sitting in a loving and healthy relationship, because that is a physical element. And we could talk about physiology and all the stuff that goes on in your bodies, right? As women and even men. Let's be real, because that can happen in
but you know what, Steph? Why is it sociably acceptable for men to talk or boast about that and get a pat on the back, but when women talk about passion, being passionate, you want to be passionately made love to, it's taboo. You know, we should talk about it. We whisper it.
We need it though.
Listen,
I
love sex.
I don't
freaking love
what
sex.
y'all think of me either. Nope, I don't.
I'm going to tell you, I love sex. As old as I am, I go to the damn gynecologist. Now, this young girl, I could have been her grandmother, and because I'm a widow and I'm not sexually active right now, she makes me watch a video on venereal diseases.
But Jane, you know why? The largest sexual transmitted disease group often happens in older adults.
I know.
As a health educator, I can tell you that's true.
I've
But
heard that.
raising boys, it was something we did talk about with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a true hard fact. Let's face it, venereal
Yeah.
diseases.
Yeah.
But it made me kind of
But they're
chuckle
getting them with
because,
somebody.
she made,
Somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, now, do you know how to use prophylactics? And I'm like, with my tongue, yeah. Hell yeah. Hell
Well,
yeah.
we're talking about healthy relationships to make sure you keep your
Well,
health
listen.
in the forefront.
Through your age, as you get older, you need some bang bang passion with no attachments. Okay,
I'm
Beautiful.
for it.
Absolutely,
I'm for it. Yep,
you
absolutely.
need to have them
I'm
in your
for it.
life.
All
You
right,
need to
spicy
have 'em.
is spicy. What can I say?
Get it spicy.
That's right.
Spicy is
I'm
spicy.
for
What
it.
can I say? Hey,
You
we're
need
all
some
here
boom
for
boom,
it.
babe. Boom boom, yes.
We're all here for
Gotta
it.
have
And
it.
we're all here for it. Love your mama C. She just she just opened us up, and I agree.
Mhm.
But let's kind of take it, and I hate taking it down now because there's so much
No,
energy in
there's a lot.
relationships.
Yeah.
You talk about sex, and it just blows up, right?
Yep.
But anyway, no, it is a part, obviously, even in a marriage, is having that loving passion for someone that you are trust, and that's also that trust element, right? I mean, that
Yep.
giving yourself to someone is, you have to have that level of trust as well. So that kind of takes it back to that, again, the foundation of loving and healthy relationships. But as we evolve through life, and things happen in life, and we lose our partners, one way or another, experiences that things just didn't go right. We realized that it was not a healthy relationship to be in. We have to move on. We lost someone before their time. So how do we learn from that experience to continue the cycle of loving and healthy relationships even after we part?
Great question.
I think a lot of self-healing has to take place after my marriage broke up. And the man I married, he was never my husband. He was just a man I married. The marriage was 2 months.
There you go.
Okay,
There's a
so that does
difference.
not a husband make.
Mm.
So when he came to me with the divorce paper, he filed divorce. And in New York State, there were only 4 areas where he could file as. And I think the area he chose was something like, in other words, not irreconcilable differences, but something that made me look like I was at fault. Well, I was so angry. I threw the papers in his face, got out of the car, and went into my house. My girlfriend called me and she said, you just want to be free. Get this over with. She said, I'll have him bring the papers up to me, up to the boutique, to me. You come up there, you sign and whatever, I'll give him the papers. We get this over. She said, we just want to get this over with so that you can move on. And let me just tell you, I've never been so hurt in all my life. It took a long time to heal from the fact that somebody could be so callous, because before we got married, I said, oh, we don't really have to do this. I mean, we don't have to get married right now. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, he wanted to get married because, he was kind of one of them church people. And I described him in my first book as a Bible toting, scripture quoting, hallelujah shouting fool, which is what he was. He made me believe that he was such a godly man. But the reality was he was fooling me. And sooner than later, it all exploded in his face, because you cannot put up a front but for so long. And when you are not genuinely connected to a person and willing to build a life with that person, then your goal is something else altogether. And so realizing all of this, I looked at all of the signs were there before I got married. All of the signs were there, but I ignored them. And I think we as women tend to do that. We ignore, we think that, oh, I'm a good person and I'll work with him. He'll work with me. We'll build something. That's not necessarily true. And so I had to deal with a lot of realities that I had not dealt with. And it took me a number of years to even, get to a place of comfort that allowed me to recognize that, you know what, it is what it is. I can either wallow in the pain of this forever, or I can move on,
Mm,
grow forward. And sometimes you don't know how to move on and grow forward from
mhm.
a divorce because
Yeah.
there's so much pain and so much of disappointment and so much distrust, dishonesty, and stuff that's going on that has really negatively impacted you, that it takes a while to grow and get beyond that. That's why I can never understand women who run or people run from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, because all you're doing is taking that pain and hurt into a relationship with somebody else. And that
Yeah.
doesn't help you. It doesn't help somebody else. And all you're going to do is attract someone who's as probably hurting as much as you, or have had relationships that were unhealthy. And now they're in another relationship with somebody who's been in an unhealthy relationship. It just all begins to explode and go crazy. You've got to give yourself time to heal, to look at the relationship, to look at your role in what happened. Everybody wants to blame the other person. No, I took part in that. So
Yeah.
what was my role in that?
Yeah.
And what did I ignore that I should have paid attention to,
Hmm.
that would have prevented me from having to go through that? We got to do the self-assessment when it comes to these relationships and when they break up and all of that. Otherwise, we go into another relationship with the same old garbage.
Well, you know what? And you say that, and I think about Tony. And Tony, you mentioned 22 years you had with your husband. Is that correct?
Almost. Yeah, almost
Almost
22
22
years.
years.
Yes.
So I hear what Mama C is saying, and there's great valid points there, and I'm sure you can relate to a lot of what she says. Tell us how, because it's recent per se, probably within the last
Yeah,
6 months
still
to a year.
actually going on.
It's
Yeah,
still fresh for
definitely.
you. So what are
Yeah.
some of the things that you had to do to say, hey, for me to continue in life and really move forward, to try to get into a loving and healthy relationship, I have some things that I experienced that I now have to heal through. And what was that? What are some of the things that you experienced that?
Great question. Just to piggyback on what Mama C said, because everything that she said, I relate to.
Hmm.
Um, the first thing I had to come to a realization is acceptance.
Mm,
Acceptance of what it was, acceptance of what it is, but not shame myself, not shun myself.
Mhm.
It's a growing experience, it's a learning experience. I learned more about myself throughout the marriage and afterwards. So acceptance is a big key. The second thing is recognizing and accepting that my marriage is complete.
mm,
Sometimes the lesson is complete. I've learned what I needed to learn. Not to say I've
Mhm.
learned everything, because we are forever learning until the day we die. But I had to come to the acceptance that my marriage is complete,
hmm.
and that is what's propelling me to continue to uncover some things about myself and to continue to discover things that I like about myself, things that I may have allowed to have been shamed about,
Mm,
things that I may have shamed myself about,
Mhm.
um, and the acceptance that you just didn't get everything right.
yeah.
I wasn't right all the time. I wasn't right a lot of the times, and
Mhm.
um, you just got to be okay with that. And it wasn't a failure. Coming to the realization for me that it wasn't a failure. It's just complete. It's
Right.
it's done.
And it's two. It takes two, right? Because the experience is not just, it's both parties had a part in the part. in the part. And we talk until we part. And to your point, I love the fact that there was some realization there that the accountability piece of part of that, and you
Mhm.
speak from that perspective and not the blame of another individual, because we all have to realize there's a part we have in this evolution of whether we remain together or whether we part, right? Whatever that next step is. So I love the fact that, and that shows me that you have really taken this serious to the counseling aspect and the healing aspect, to self-realization is very important in
Yeah,
any
and
situation.
and to jump in on that as well, it's I had to come to understand that he wasn't doing things to me as much as he was in a mode of self-preservation. And the
Yeah.
same thing for me. People are not doing things to me. People are not normally thinking of me when they're doing what they're doing. They're really in a mode of self-preservation and self-survival. And I have to realize the same thing for them. I'm not doing something to you. I'm trying to preserve myself in some kind of way. And that sometimes is healthy and sometimes it's not healthy. Like I
Mm,
said, I didn't always get it right. I don't always get it right.
Right.
And not getting it right a lot of times doesn't mean that it doesn't work. When it works, it means that you don't get it right all the time and you recognize that you don't get it right, and then you can get through that. You can get through it. When you can't get through each other not getting it right most of the time, that's when your marriage is complete. And for me, it's complete.
yeah.
And you know what? I think that we have to recognize that some of the most hurtful experiences open the door to some of the most incredible and remarkable lessons in life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Lessons we
And healing.
need.
Yeah.
Okay. These hard knocks we get are based on our need to know something,
Yeah.
to learn
It's
something,
okay to not
so
know.
that we can grow to that next level. You can't grow
Yep.
to the next level if you're not willing to assess what happened and recognize that it's a growth opportunity. But
It
in
was.
that
Yeah.
moment, we have to be able to get past our pain or effectively deal with it so that we can get the lesson, so that we can earn the blessing, so that we can move on and grow and become our best selves. And that's what
Mhm.
happened to me. I mean, look, he wasn't all at fault. I wasn't all at fault. His intents were not what my intentions were. I think we were more physically compatible than any other area. I had to
Mhm.
look at that whole picture, and I had to be willing to accept my role in the pain that I experienced.
Mm. That's
Yeah,
and
because it's
that's
not just somebody doing something to you.
to
It's
you.
also a part of what you allow.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
I recognize that I allowed a lot of things through my lack of communication. That's another skill that I realized that I have to acquire. I thought
Mhm.
I'm a talker, right? So I thought talking and being communicative are the same things. They are not. I've learned. I am learning that just because I know how to speak well doesn't mean that I'm communicating effectively.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so that is another aspect of my personality that I had to recognize as part of the demise of my relationship, because
Mhm.
a lot of
Absolutely.
times I expected him to read my mind.
Yeah.
And that was a very difficult realization to come to. I really did. I
Absolutely.
expected him to read my mind. And then when he didn't read my mind, I got mad, and
Yes.
then my communication turned into argument instead of communication. That
Yeah.
was all me.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree with you, Mama. See, I am so enjoying the journey of self-awareness. I am
Yes.
enjoying uncovering and discovering all that makes up Tony,
And the
and
more self
what I have to offer and what I have to now offer and be open to receive. Because
absolutely. And the more self-aware we become, the more at peace we become, the happier we become. I always say that peace of mind is the fertilizer for happiness. A
Mm,
lot of people don't have peace of mind. And so all kinds of crazy things go on in their minds that get in the way of them being able to logically assess themselves and therefore respond in rational ways that are conducive for themselves and others. Because if you're no good for me, then I'm no good for you. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So we have to be willing to accept that, we're not everybody's cup of tea, and it's okay.
Yep.
We're not
but I
going.
think sometimes you can be somebody's cup of tea and they not be yours, and vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It
Absolutely.
works both ways, but we have to be willing to accept the
Mhm.
realities there and not be. I think Hillary Evans was saying, she had put up a note saying something to the effect that, you can't beat yourself up when a marriage ends. And
Right.
it's true. You have to look at, and
Takes
and
two.
anger, we got to put our anger in check.
Yes.
The
Yes.
more angry you get, the less likely you are to learn the lesson.
Yep, because
Yeah.
anger, underneath anger is fear. You're
Yes.
fearing that you're losing something or not
Yes.
getting something. What really is under anger is fear.
And
So
that's the
what am I?
control element, right? It's a
Yes.
control element because
Oh,
I don't have
talk about it.
control
Yes.
of what
Yes.
I don't have control, so that makes me afraid
Yep.
because I can't control the situation.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. And that'll make you angry because you don't have that level of control that
Absolutely.
you want to have or you think you should have in a
And you're
situation.
not in control anyway. I don't
Oh,
care
no.
what you think.
Yeah.
What
And
you
Joan
think.
call
You're
you
not
and
in
said, come
control.
on, part two, part two.
Part
So,
two.
so
Absolutely.
So with that said, I mean, I love this is such an I mean, the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience, the just all the nuggets that have been shared on this show. And I unfortunately Spicy had to leave. Loved, obviously her perspective as well. We definitely need to do a part two. And I think we need the brothership
We
to
need the
kind of
brothership.
help
We
us
need the brothership to be part
Please
of this
have me back.
dialogue.
Please,
Yes.
this
please,
dialogue.
please. Because this has been amazing. This has been healing in itself. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mama C, for all of your wisdom and knowledge.
absolutely.
Well, you know what?
Absolutely.
Thank you guys, because you know what? I think we're showing other women that it is possible for women to come together, to learn together, to grow together, to be together, and to cherish our relationships and what we bring to the table.
Yes.
And that's just wonderful. That's what I love about the sistership so much, is that we are
I
all
got my shirt on.
in sync. You got your
She's got her shirt
we're
on.
all in sync with one
Yes.
another. It doesn't
Yes.
mean we all agree. It doesn't mean that we're all alike, but we have a level of love that incorporates trust and compassion and loyalty and all of that. And you can't ask for more.
Can't.
I absolutely I'm telling you, every time I get on a show, there's so much more that I learn. I'm in a marriage of 10 years. It'll be 10 years, 10
Yep,
years in
yep,
April.
yep, yep,
We've been together over
Big
20
up.
years.
yep.
Big up.
God blessed us,
Yes,
where
God
we were able
bless
to
you.
find one
Yes.
another. And yes, do we have opportunity inside our, let me tell you something. The one thing we don't do is share everything with
Good.
everybody.
That's
Good.
We
right.
got to take care of our own opportunities within our own relationship, and there's love, and there's understanding, and there's yes, we have our challenges as well, just like any couple does, but we have to respect one another as well, and that's another layer, respecting each other enough to know when
Absolutely.
it's time to look at the opportunities within your relationships and have a dialogue about it.
Yeah.
And I have to say I'm blessed, because it's very hard to have long lasting relationships without understanding you're part of the opportunity as well. You may not want to admit it, but you have to deal with it at some point.
Absolutely.
But with that said, we're definitely going to have another show, and the brothership that's out there. Woo woo! I know.
Big
you
ups
guys
to the
are gonna be
brothership.
we're going to have to bring the brothership in and
Oh yeah, that
dialogue. Mama C,
dynamite.
love you.
And I'd
group
love
of
to
men.
come back for that one as well.
Tony,
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
you're in. You know you're in, Tony. There's no question. Tony's got to come back.
Oh,
And Mama
absolutely,
C,
Tony.
as always, we love you, the Queen Ager, the Oracle, and our
Yes.
wisdom.
Oh, I love that.
The Oracle. He has all the wisdom. I want to thank everyone for joining us today on the cycle of a loving and healthy relationship until we part. I want to thank everyone for the sistership. Thank you, Tony, again. Jane, Spicy, you're out there. Mama C, we will be back on the radio at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. Make sure you catch us. And we have our show next week as well. Come and join us at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next Sunday, every Sunday, we are here. We are the sistership. And we are here for you because we talk about this and that. The sistership. This is your girl, Steph Fire, and we are out. Peace.
All right.
Love y'all. Love.
On a sister ship, come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about this, talk about that, talk about faith, talk about facts. Let's talk about living, talk about giving, talk about family, talk about